You talk bad about my team, you must be a clown. This is Keek on the mic, so you know you better bear down. Bear down. Bear down.
Hey, what's going on, Bears fans? Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Keek on the Mic, the podcast all about the Chicago Bears. Like always, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. So today on the Keek on the Mic, the report going out of Chicago is that the Bears brass is overwhelmingly impressed with Justin Fields' progress. And obviously, Bears fans and the national media have remained very focused on what Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears have done to surround their young quarterback, Justin Fields, with as much talent as possible for him to take that next step in Chicago. And obviously, we have discussed this so many times on this podcast, but most fans feel that Ryan Poles hasn't done enough to surround his young quarterback, Justin Fields, in order for him to take that next step. But today on the podcast, I really want to break something down for you guys, because when you really break down this offseason for Ryan Poles and the Chicago Bears, obviously they needed to reshape this entire roster, right? There was a lot of older players with very, very high contracts. They needed to bring in some talent to help Justin Fields, obviously. And some, like I mentioned, some fans feel like he accomplished that. Some fans feel like he hasn't. It just depends on what side you're on. But something that I really want to break down for you guys on the podcast today is that before they can rebuild this offense in particular, they also wanted to rebuild Justin Fields as well. And what I mean by that, when you look at Justin Fields' rookie year, it wasn't perfect by any means. You know, his mechanics and fundamentals were sometimes sloppy, and often he struggled to handle the speed of the game, especially when you're looking at the speed and complexity of some of these NFL defenses. So the Bears' overall goal this offseason was to break down the quarterback, break down Justin Fields, and build him back up from scratch. Obviously, Matt Nagy, and we talked about a lot of Matt Nagy on this podcast, but Matt Nagy didn't do Justin Fields any favors whatsoever. If anything, Matt Nagy was on his way to ruining Justin Fields, much like he did Mitch Trubisky. Obviously, that's a sore subject. That's in the past now. But it makes sense that bringing in Ryan Poles, and he brought in Luke Getsy, Matt Eberflus, they wanted to build Justin Fields back up from scratch, break him down, and build him up from scratch. So it makes a lot of sense. And according to Jeff Hughes of the Bears blog, his progress has far exceeded even their most optimistic projections, and this is what Jeff Hughes had to say about the situation. Since meeting and working with Fields, the new leadership has been overwhelmingly impressed. He's already instituted those mechanical changes and looks comfortable with them. His command of the playbook in just a few months has allowed him to be a vocal leader both on the field and in the meeting rooms. His charisma is infectious. This is his team, and the players around him are responding. The leadership loves everything they've seen from Fields since taking over the franchise. But folks, he still has to do it on Sundays. That's all that matters. And obviously, Jeff Hughes has some type of close source inside Hallis Hall. So whatever he says, I definitely trust. And what Jeff Hughes just said at the end especially is he still has to do it on Sundays. That's all that matters. And that is obviously true. All this can be for nothing. We have to be aware of that. I have so much confidence in Justin Fields, but at the end of the day, he has to come out and prove all that hard work he's put into offseason and make sure he showcases that skills and what he has learned over the offseason on Sundays. But obviously, this is great to hear. This is great that Justin Fields is taking command. Obviously, it's all about Justin Fields. He's our franchise guy. You want to see him develop, and that's what good coaches do. They help their players develop, right? And it sounds like everything is going really, really well so far. And obviously, I said this so many times on the podcast as well, and I probably sound like a broken record, but Justin Fields will receive plenty of help from just better scheming. Going back to Matt Nagy once again. Matt Nagy didn't do any of his players any favors. The man was clueless on how to run an NFL offense. Obviously, now you bring in Luke Getsy that has a legit plan for Justin Fields. And just by better scheming around Justin Fields' strengths, I anticipate that will help Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears offense finally find an identity for themselves and hopefully take that offense to the next level. And in a recent interview with Rich Eisen, Eberflus stated that the Bears hope to protect the young quarterback in Justin Fields through heavier usage of not only play action, quick passes, but also screen passes as well. Everything that's going to be really easy for Justin Fields to get the ball out of his hands very quick, because obviously in this Luke Getsy scheme, he wants Justin Fields to make quick decisions and get the ball out of his hands as fast as possible. And also thanks to a very strong backfield with David Montgomery, right? Khalil Herbert, obviously adding Ebner from Baylor in there as well. The Chicago Bears are very confident that they're going to be able to establish a strong foundation in the running game as well, which will obviously help Justin Fields' progression as well. So overall, and I know once again I probably sound like a broken record, but a scheme built for Justin Fields that is built towards Justin Fields' strengths will help him elevate his game this season, and I'm truly confident in that. And everything points to this regimen, especially when you look at what Luke Getsy has said, especially what I just mentioned about Matt Eberflus. This regimen has a legit plan for Justin Fields. So I am super excited to see these guys, especially Justin Fields and this offense, put it all together. And it may not look pretty right away, but I'm excited to see them put it all together and watch them play in an actual football game. And it's going to be really, really exciting to see. But it's also really good to hear that Justin Fields is progressing well in the development of this new Chicago Bears offense that Luke Getsy is bringing over to Chicago. So like always, how do you guys feel about the report? Let me know down below in the comment section. But before I let you guys go, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell notification to catch all Bears content right here on the podcast. Make sure you follow me on all my social media platforms. And make sure you share this episode of Geek on the Mic with every single Bears fan that you know. But other than that, I'll be back for an all-new Bears podcast right here on Geek on the Mic. Thanks, guys, and bear down.
You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic. You can go and subscribe, cause I be on it right. You ain't bout it, you ain't bout it, you ain't kick on the mic.